This sitting is now resumed. Prior to the suspension, we were debating the debt holder approval of debt restructuring act 2018. To that we refer. Honourable member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to associate myself with this bill being debated today and to join in congratulating my colleagues who would have spoken thus far in support of the bill, and in particular to say congratulations to the Minister in the Ministry of Finance for an excellent presentation detailing where we've come from and where we intend to go. And I believe that the constituents of Christchurch East Central will be very, very proud, as I'm sure they all are, in the excellent display, the presentation undertaken by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. If one were to cast his or her eyes back to 2013, and we were in this place, it would have been perhaps a magnificent display of economic talent, and that this country perhaps would have shaved maybe 5 years off a mess that we found leading to 2008 onwards. So I think that it is important that we put that into the record. I also want to say a big thank you to members of the economic team, his economic team and the ministry, along with the, within the Ministry of Prime Minister's Office, Economic Affairs and Finance and Investments, for an excellent job in putting together a program in short time. We all recognize that the problems that we encounter as a country, those problems are deep, they are very severe, and we know that they're structural. And therefore, it is important that we take the appropriate measures to counter a current situation, if left unattended, could result in disastrous consequences for the country and for all those of us who live in Barbados. When you look at a situation, Mr. Speaker, when a country is faced with interest payments alone of $750 million, not created by the Barbados Labour Party, but when you look at interest payments of $750 million on revenue, you ask yourself what is happening. And when you add amortization as well, Mr. Speaker, you are faced with something in the order of $1.7 billion. And that is the extent of the problem that we are faced with. But unlike the former administration, we even decided that we will continue to borrow and add more debt and leave the problems unattended. The government of Barbados, this Barbados Labour Party government, has decided to take the urgent and necessary steps to ensure that we are not faced with a longer-term problem. And I understand the comments made by the Leader of the Opposition. And during his presentation, I made notes of 1 or 2 points that he would have made. He talked about the issue of confidence. He's not here, but I'm sure he's hearing me. The issue of confidence and the suspension of debt. Well, Mr. Speaker, the country must know that in all debt restructuring, Mr. Speaker, that suspension of debt is a very common feature, especially when you're dealing with sovereign debt. And that's a fact. So I don't want the country to believe that there is an issue in respect of the suspension of debt, because those players who play in the financial market, whether it be in Bridgetown, Barbados, whether it be the city in London, or whether it be in New York or elsewhere, they understand sovereign debt and how it operates. The issue in respect of investment and exports and leading to growth, we have a counter. We have a national insurance fund, and I will come back to that very shortly, that could be put to work for this country. We also have a situation that once we've stabilized it and we come out to the, and we go to the IMF and everything is confirmed, that you will see a flow of foreign direct investments. And as a result of the foreign direct investments, you will then see jobs being created and growth will come along. You also have to institute incentives. And clearly the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs and Investments, of course, they will look and implement new investments in order to promote growth, because there is absolutely no contrast when we look at the human capital element that we have in this Barbados Labour Party versus the human capital element that they had in the former government, Mr. Speaker. And I make bold to say that. So I wouldn't worry too much in respect of the question of investment and exports. I think we are confident enough, to the Honourable Member Sir Michael West, that we can deal with those. Impact on the social services. We heard not so long ago from the Honourable Member for St. Lucie, the welfare vote was increased. There's a cushion, and a careful government will also ensure that if we have to extend resources to protect the disabled, the poor, and the vulnerable, then this Barbados Labour Party has a proud record of ensuring that there's an element of protection. In respect of the sectors not performing, well, the government is only 4 months old, circa 4 months old. And I understand the comment being made by the leader of the opposition, but we're only 4 months old. When it comes to 12 months or 24 months, then you can make the comment. But we are 4 months old. And we have the human capital available to us to ensure that we can put the necessary measures in place to grow the country. And I believe that we will get that job done. In respect of the advisories, the leader of the opposition said that there are people asking questions out there, and fine. But I would say that if I were in another position and I had to pay the resources that we are paying compared to the resources that we pay for consultancies in the Democratic Labour Party, because if you add the consultancies that they pay in the Democratic Labour Party plus the legal fees, I will argue on the basis that if a government can put together a team of men and women, nationals of this country, to put forward an IMF-supported program to get it passed when it goes elsewhere to the board, and the plan comes through, Mr. Speaker, and this country can save $500 million alone. 500 million, annualized 500 million, then I say I wouldn't worry about what I pay the investors, because we're not paying, paying the consultants more than the last government paid. And we paid consultants in the last government more than they had in this regime, Mr. Speaker, and look what they took us. They took us to $15 billion in debt. And when we look at it, speaking of debt, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West went through it. But we inherited a situation when the Barbados Labour Party, and I have to repeat this, when the Barbados Labour Party left office in 2008, at the end of 2007, we only had about $6 billion in debt. The Democratic Labour Party government, within 10 years, more than double debt that we had left, and that debt accumulated at 2007 of $5 billion would have accumulated over the last 40, at that point, about 40 years. So when you look and see what they have done, I say to the leader of the opposition, I am not worried. I don't think you should be worried as well. The consultants are doing a good job. The hand that they have been dealt, they have to manage, and I'm sure that along with other members of the government's economic team, we will deal with that. So those are my concerns, my responses in respect of the comments made by the leader of the opposition. But I wish to say that, and the leader of the opposition is right in this respect, that yes, the maladministration that we inherited, and I refer to the Democratic Labour Party as the merchants of debt. The merchants of debt. And they are responsible for where we are today, but I'm not going to dwell on them too much today. But I want it to be entered into hands hard that they went, in my judgment, they had a credit culture in this country. And that credit culture accumulated with their defeat at the polls. And thank God for the people who decided to come out in the numbers and to vote against them. Because if this country had to undergo another 5 years, we heard it from the floor today, Mr. Speaker, we will know what a Barbados will look like in this month, September of 2018, if they were in office. But enough with them. The issue of consultation, it was transparent. Honestly, they had information posted, there was information posted on the government's website, JS. The social partnership met into the wee hours of the morning. I stand corrected, but they met into the wee hours of the morning. You had labor, you had the employers, you had government sitting at the table and discussing the way forward for Barbados. So it's a very transparent process. And as a result of that openness and that transparency, we were able to take the people into our confidence. The leader, the Prime Minister, also went public. She had a press conference to update the country. She went on social media. We kept the country up to date on the proceedings. And it is a good thing that we did. Because at the end of the day, we should never have a situation where a leader fails to communicate with his or her people. And that is where we are today. In respect of the journey going forward, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage all Barbadians to walk with the Barbados Labour Party. One thing about the Barbados Labour Party, we don't disappoint. We work very hard to achieve our objectives. We have a team of men and women within the party, within this government, who've dedicated themselves to the task ahead. And I know that at the end of this journey, the people will realize that the Barbados Labour Party once again took them out of a position of despair and brought them back to prosperity, Mr. Speaker. And that is important, because I don't know if it is our lot, but every time the Democratic Labour Party assumes office, at the end of their tenure, it falls to the Barbados Labour Party, to the good men and women within the Barbados Labour Party, to undo what they did. And this is one of those challenges. And yes, I accept, it is perhaps the greatest test, the greatest challenge in a post-independent Barbados, for a country that finds itself where it finds itself today, not because of the Barbados Labour Party, but because of incompetent people where they have left this country. And it falls to us, sir, to undo and to put the good back and restore prosperity to this country. And I'm sure we will want. So I really want to ask the country to continue on this journey with us, to walk with us. We will get it done, Mr. Speaker, and I'm confident about that. Mr. Speaker, debt restructuring will bring new opportunities. In the private sector, when you restructure your debt, not only in Barbados, but if you go abroad, you restructure debt. You've seen case studies. If you follow USA media, UK media, there are several case studies. You're faced with a challenge, you restructure, even if you get a bit of a moratorium and a payment of principal, and you continue, Mr. Speaker. There are companies who had to restructure, and at the end of the restructuring period, they came out stronger. And I'm confident that the Barbados Labour Party will do what we have to do, and at the end of the day, we will come out and be a stronger government and a stronger party, Mr. Speaker. In respect of the opportunities, take, for example, the National Insurance Scheme. The National Insurance Scheme is a $5.5 billion scheme. The government of Barbados revenues, I believe, are under $3 million. But if you think about what we could do with the National Insurance Fund to enhance the development of this country, and I'm saying to you, when the program gets going, you will see the level of development that we are capable of in the Barbados Labour Party, and we will have sustainable development. But yes, I accept that national insurance is one of those institutions that will obviously have to endure a little bit of pain too, but not significantly so. And it will not in any way stop the pensioners and those beneficiaries of the national insurance scheme from getting their benefits because they are protected. They're protected. So I do not want, because I know in politics sometimes there are people who will run off and they will try to create all sorts of stories. I say to the country that the National Insurance Fund is sound and shall remain sound under Barbados Labour Party government. Mr. Speaker, the annualized savings as a result of the restructuring measures will result in approximately $550 million on interest. Now, if we were not a caring and responsible government, the ordinary man and woman in the street, Mr. Speaker, the constituents in St. Michael West Central would have had to carry that load. Well, I am grateful and thankful to the cabinet first of all, because you would have to approve a cabinet, for the foresight in not allowing the constituents and the other constituents of Michael West Central and the other constituents across Barbados to be saddled with $550 million in cuts. Because yes, we may have to cut more, and let's say it's approximately $200 million. Could you imagine, sir, us, a Barbados Labour Party government, asking the people to carry the load by themselves of over $700 million? Impossible. So I'm grateful. It might sound harsh, but I would prefer that the load is shared and that the ordinary man and woman in St. Michael West Central don't have to carry the load that they would have had to carry were it not for the foresight of the Ministry of Finance, the economic team, and the Cabinet of Barbados. So I say, on that score alone, that this Barbados Labour Party has demonstrated its capacity to understand the socio-economic development of this country. And by asking the people not to carry a $550 million loan, $550 million load, is to be commended, highly commended. There might be a little pain, but we have shielded people, especially our people in this country, from what otherwise would have been a significant load. That comes with foresight and thinking and planning, Mr. Speaker, and that is what the Barbados Labour Party is about. It is sheer sacrifice. Yes, there are owners of capital who will have to carry some of the burden to assist and to pay and to share in the load. But understand one thing. It is not to say that at the end of the support program that the country will be worse off, because we are working hard to ensure that at the end of the program, Barbados is in a better position. And that is what this is about. So I say to you, Mr. Speaker, that I have come to this Parliament on this occasion not to talk austerity, Mr. Speaker. I have come to this Parliament like I will do in St. Michael West Central to speak to hope, to speak about a brighter future, Mr. Speaker, for Barbados. I have come here to talk about development and to talk about a better life for our people, because that is the Barbados Labour Party's way. Always a better life for our people. And I know that from the time we saw what we did in the budget presented earlier this year by the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, when she increased the vote for the welfare, that demonstrates compassion, understanding, and clarity of thought. And I commend her and her team. But I also want to say this, Mr. Speaker, that this country is a wonderful place to live. And it has to be about a shared sacrifice. But I know that if we are able to save, and we have to do it, we have to achieve it, and we are able to make the savings that we have to make, that the people of Barbados within a short period of time will see that the Barbados Labour Party government took a country limping and at that precipice of despair, pulled it back, and was able to grant new hope and new life to our people. And I say to the country, yes, the government perhaps will not be in a position to borrow a significant amount because we have to get through it. But I say to them that they shall remain confident in the hope and in the knowledge that we have institutions that will go to work and work hard for them. And I cheer one, and I give the House this solemn commitment that I will work very hard on behalf of the people of Barbados, the constituents of St. Michael West Central, but more importantly, on behalf of this great Barbados Labour Party, to ensure that we have a successful program. And I say to those who perhaps have an element of doubt, there's one thing you can do, and you can trust the Barbados Labour Party. We have a proud record. We do not go there and engage in squandermania. We manage the affairs of Barbados. And the same persons who were part of a successful government, we have some who are here today within the cabinet of Barbados. And that gives me even greater confidence. But I say to the people of Barbados, walk with the Barbados Labour Party. There is hope for a better future, for more development. And always remember that the Barbados Labour Party's way is always a better life for our people. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I intervene in this debate, which is clearly an extremely significant debate in this parliamentary session. A debate where this Parliament is asking holders of debt instruments in their favour owed by the government of Barbados to facilitate the restructuring of these instruments through a voting process set out in the Act, process which would bind all the affected creditors in terms of a comprehensive debt restructuring process, and which would give Barbados more elbow room than we have at present. Mr. Speaker, this government came into office just 4 months ago on the massive endorsement of 75% of the voting public of Barbados. We found an economy, the third most indebted in the world, with debt to GDP at 170, 175%, including debt owed to local institutions, to local people, all debt. Totally unsustainable. This government was confronted a week after coming into office with having to face an $80 million debt repayment from the Credit Suisse undertaken by the previous DLP government. We took a decision that we could not pay that particular installment of debt. And so, you know, I always say that the majority of females who have to run houses in Barbados, because we know that the majority of households in Barbados are run by females, would have been better ministers of finance than anyone who sat on the government benches in the last parliament, because they run in a lot of cases, sir, households on less than substantial earnings or income and are able to manage that. A mother will say, I have to feed my children today. I have to send them to school. I have to buy clothes for them. I have to sustain this family. And therefore, if for a month or two I can't pay for the fridge or the TV from one of the hire purchase companies, they're going to make that sacrifice in the interest of their household. That was the decision that confronted the Barbados Labour Party government, and we took the decision that we could not take $80 million out of foreign reserves left at $220 million at that stage to pay that debt. No government in the history of the Caribbean has come into office facing those kind of crisis situations. And it's credit to the Honourable Prime Minister and her economic team, including the presenter of this debate there today, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, and the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, who will no doubt intervene in this debate as well. And to others, I'm calling them in a positive light, Ambassador Clyde Maskell, Alvanis Prasad, the consultants that we heard of today, sir, they're worth every single cent that they're paid by this government to bring us to this stage within 4 months where we are restructuring our debt to save the Barbados dollar, sir. I have not come across one person, not one, and I challenge any person who opposes what we're doing today to bring any Barbadian person who says, don't worry with what we're doing today, let's devalue the dollar, whether it's 8 to 1, 16 to 1, whatever. Because as was said last week then, you're asking for all of us now to be poor, except of course those who made their millions of dollars, whether in construction monies or legal fees or just in terms of corrupt practices over the last 10 years. Everybody else is going to be poor, sir. So this is the choice that we have. There is no other choice. And full credit to the Honourable Prime Minister and her economic team, who, as the Honourable Member for St. George South said earlier, were working on rescuing Barbados for 18 months prior to the election, working on strategies, on schemes, negotiating with international players, obtaining assistance from legal and international experts who have done this before in other parts of the globe, working on a plan so that we could hit the ground running. Because you would recall, sir, the day after the election, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East would have met with the social partners, with the central bank top management, and would have hit the ground running. Within 3 days, a cabinet in place. Some would say it's large, sir, but each and every cabinet minister, sir, stranded, outstretched with work. All hands on deck to rescue this country. And therefore, a staff office arrangement with the IMF concluded in record time, 3 months. No other country in the world having reached this stage in negotiations with the IMF, just waiting to be endorsed now at their executive level. But, sir, you know, we would be criticized. And it's a free country, sir, democracy, sir. about how we put in people at risk, pensioners at risk, old people at risk. My reading of the situation, sir, is that this government has tried its hardest, done all that is possible within the circumstances of a tremendous debt, of lack of foreign reserves, to ring-fence the most vulnerable in this country. We've brought, sir, a resolution which was approved in this Parliament for the payment of an increased cost of living allowance at the rate of 3.3% per annum to government pensioners, with effect retroactively, sir, 1st of April 2018. We weren't even in office at the time, sir. That has been approved by this Parliament, was approved on the 14th of August by the Senate the next day, and is part of the law of Barbados. This Parliament, sir, raised non-contributory pensions by 50%. Never before in the history of Barbados have non-contributory pensioners got such a large percentage increase. Again, to help protect the older people in this country, sir. Substantial percentage of whom will be people with disabilities. Within this same bill, sir, which is before your Parliament today, pensioners, people of pensionable age, 67 and over, are getting preference in terms of their payment of principal and interest in a more speedy time than those who are not pensioners. We have realized, sir, that a caring government, which we are, has to do those kind of interventions to protect the most vulnerable in society, those who are not getting any income from any employment anymore. As the Honourable Member who just spoke, the Honourable Member for St. Michael, West Central, we've increased the welfare budget in the budget of June 11th by $5 million. Again, to give greater space, economic space to those who will have to participate in that because of any undue hardship which may come to them and their families. We have, sir, sought to, before concluding any arrangement with IMF, bring back state-funded tuition fees to university students of Barbadian citizenship in this country, sir. That alone, and you're talking about social intervention, sir. I'm sure in your constituency, sir, I know in mine, dozens more back in university from 2 weeks ago, with the $8,000 in tuition fees being paid by the government of Barbados, sir, being given an opportunity to reach the top, to fulfill their talents. As every able-bodied Barbadian, capable Barbadian, mentally alert Barbadians should have the opportunity to do, whether in terms of academic skills or other technical and vocational skills. That is what this government did immediately. We again, sir, remove two of the most iniquitous taxes ever passed by this Parliament of Barbados since adult suffrage. NSRL, which not only was a 10% tax, but a 10% on top of everything else, on top of the VAT, everything else, sir. So the cumulative effect of that was much more than 10%. We removed that before any of this. Yes, sir, the government will now have to ensure that those who are providers of goods and services don't take advantage and bring down their prices. We have to protect the consumers, and therefore we have to be watchdogs. In these cases, all the bureaucratic agencies that have the mandate to watch prices an increase in prices or decrease have to be on their guard. And yes, we will have as a government to seek to ensure that they do their job, that nobody is to rip out nobody's eye in this country, sir, because they may be poor. We also, sir, abolish the municipal solid waste tax, tax that the last government themselves didn't understand, sir, because the then honorable member for St. Lucie, and praise to the Lord, you heard the new member, the present member for St. Lucie today, sir, honorable member, and you understand why the people of St. Lucie now feel proud, because that member then, under the last government, he didn't understand the tax. It was clear during the debate, but he was part of a government that didn't understand it either. All they were doing was taking up people's money in tax and nothing to show for it. No infrastructural development, students paying school fees, their taxes on your case, and the country in debt. So we have brought in those interventions socially already, sir, and economically, fiscally, to try to protect especially the most vulnerable in Barbados. But yes, sir, everybody has to share in this sacrifice, because as been said, sir, the country on May 24th is bankrupt, sir, insolvent. And I mean, we have to understand that. But the government still finds 5% across the board to pay all public servants, which was their due, not having been paid any increase in salary for a whole 10 years, sir. A whole 10 years. 5% increase in salary again within the first 2 months. In fact, named in the mini budget, the budget of 17 days after the Barbados Labour Party came into office. All of that, sir, that cannot be done or sustained without a restructuring of the debt, because you cannot afford to pay 1/3 of your tax earnings in debt and expect to sustain growth or development of your people. It is impossible. This is needed, sir. A savings of $500 million annually in debt repayments to protect the sanctity of the Barbados dollar, to protect the peg at 2-to-1 US, which each and every Barbadian agrees ought to remain the same. And in that regard, sir, to protect the welfare of Barbadians and the sustainability of this country. That's the long and short of it, sir. Without this, sir, we will not be able to do the trust loans, which the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke about under his ministry, whereby people in self-employment, or those who want to go into self-employment, will be able to borrow loans from the government of Barbados to either advance or start their own businesses at very low interest rates, 2.5% or 3%, whatever it is, with moratorium or grace period to repay. Something similar to what was done at a different level, for example, in Bangladesh, which was extremely successful. And in Kenya, I believe they do it as well. Without what we're doing today, sir, and we urge those debt instrument holders to vote for this bill, sir, in the interest not only of the country of Barbados, the Barbados brand, but for themselves and their families and their communities, sir. Without this, we will not be able to do the Building Blocks program for youth, which the enthusiastic and energetic member for Christchurch, West Central, sir, Minister of Youth Affairs, has put together, sir, whereby blocks in your constituency and blocks in my constituency, like in Thunder Bay, because we went down Thunder Bay together, will be empowered, sir, in terms of jobs and technical ability coming together as communities to empower themselves and advance in terms of employment and self-employment opportunities. Without this, we will not be able to advance our program whereby communities, disadvantaged communities and persons with disabilities will be able to tender for government procurement and will be able to have an advantage in terms of getting government contracts, which is what this government intends to do. Without this, we will not be able to tackle a lot of the mission-critical agenda which this government came into office promising on our manifesto and which the people of Barbados massively endorsed on the 24th of May with their X in favor of the Barbados Labour Party. We would not be able to buy the garbage trucks which each and every Barbadian understands needs to be bought, and which the Honourable Member for St. Michael East has vowed will start rolling into Barbados in 2 months' time. We will not be able to buy transport board buses, sir, which somehow declined from a fleet of about 190 in January 2008 when the Barbados Labour Party left office to below 70 on May the 24th, and which the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, who spoke so dramatically in here today, and his Minister of State, the Honourable Member for St. Lucie, have miraculously, within 3 months, increased the fleet by 50%, sir, from less than 70 to 110 at the start of the school term. And all credit to those two ministers, sir, and to the chairman of the Transport Board as well on this effort. Without this, sir, we will not be able to keep a handle on the sewerage mess which we found on coming into office on the South Coast, threatening in Bridgetown as well, which the Honourable Member for Christchurch East has led from the front and got under control in a couple months after the last government in a whole couple years couldn't find any solution for. This is what we're in here talking about, sir. And we can't only be thinking, yes, as some people will, about how I now lose this interest and I had this money. This is a situation, sir, where all of us are in this together. And all of us have to make some sacrifice to put Barbados back on the map again as one of the leading developing countries in the world, as one of the leading small island states in the world, where we can hold our head in pride again in any part of the world. We have started that process, sir. Investment confidence, as the Honourable Member for St. James South said, is returning to Barbados. A major university, Ross University, we didn't go after it, sir. And we have empathy, sir, with our sister, CARICOM Nation, Dominica, on this issue, and we will assist, sir. But we didn't go after Ross. Ross came to us, sir. And that is an expression of confidence in this new Barbados administration, sir. Our Honourable Prime Minister has led this government, this country from the front, every step of the way. Barbadians informed as to the process, as to what we are doing dialogue, consultation with every major group, every group in this country, whether it's business, whether it's trade unions, whether it's agriculture, whether it's the people being invited to and responding positively to a questionnaire, 93 questions, over 5,000 people responding on how to help restructure and modernize this country in terms of the state-funded enterprises. And we, the ministers, the parliamentary team, following suit, and following our leader, and with energy committing ourselves to the task as never before, sir. Because the future of this country is at stake. And it isn't only about us, it's about our children, our grandchildren, in some cases not yet born. Sir, and it can go wrong. We were on the precipice. It was like a patient, sir, who required heart surgery. You're delaying, the last government delaying that heart surgery, making the decision, and the patient almost dead, and it falling on these new doctors now to try and save the life of this patient. Critical stage, hard choices to make, but those hard choices being made for the future of this country. We will stamp out corruption, sir, because that was part of the problem too. Corrupt practices all around for the last 10 years. People being allowed to do what they want to do, ministers. Suddenly, multimillionaires overnight. And their associates, law partners and shadows, sir. All of that. We already brought in, sir, before this Parliament, Integrity in Public Life Act. And all of us signing codes of conduct, sir. Not only us, sir, but you got to disclose your spouses too, sir. Some persons probably didn't even know what the spouses were for, sir. But that disclosure handed to Cabinet Secretary. All of that is part of it. Reform of the educational system, sir. Ministry of Smart Technology to improve ease of doing business in this country, sir, for people. And that is fundamental, because you can't be taking 5 years for an application at immigration, sir, of which I have ministerial responsibility, or police certificates of character that 85% of the Barbadians need to get a job, taking 7 weeks, sir. All of that we working on. Honourable Minister of Smart Technology in the other place, sir. And that's why you have the creation of that ministry. Public entertainment licenses, bear hassle, driver's license, all of that will soon be things of the past. All of that, sir, is part of what we're dealing with here today. Town planning reform, sir. This government has pledged to bring before this Parliament, before the end of the year, new town planning legislation. Because the town planning legislation came into force in Barbados around the time of independence. And a green paper already before Cabinet on that particular issue. All of that to ease the business, ease doing business in this country, to make Barbados more competitive again from a situation where every year we were declining in terms of our competitiveness globally, from 72 in 2012 down to 139 out of 160 countries measured last year or 2 years ago. We need this to attract new business, to attract new investment in the renewable energy sector, in the creative and artistic industries, in the educational and health services, in the agro-industries, in research, in international business sector and tourism, and in high-tech and software development, sir. We need this to retool and empower our people, to retrain and enfranchise our public sector workers, sir. So therefore, a training levy of $30 million being established to do this, $30 million annually into retooling and empowering and retraining and enfranchising our public service sector workers. So all of this can only be done if what we are doing today passes. We have to modernize this government to save our dollar. We have therefore, sir, this government brought as well close association with this bill, Barbados Economic Reform and Transformation Plan aimed at restoring our macroeconomic stability while at the same time placing this country and this economy on a path of sustainable and inclusive growth. So as has been repeatedly said by honourable members on this side, in this government, sir, today, we will overcome, sir. We will stop these consecutive downgrades, 22 under the last government. We will return this country to growth. Once these plans are in place, sir, within 2 years, there will be some pain, sir. But after the pain, there will be joy, sir. As has been said, today, the 30 of us in here can't do it alone. We call on all Barbadians to help us, sir. We know that, sir. 30 people out of 270,000 cannot achieve all of this. Everyone has to buy in to make their sacrifice. So we have sought, as I said, to protect the most vulnerable in the country. We will ensure that all people, sir, still are able to sustain themselves with the help of their families. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital has been given money, sir, $10 million, I believe, in the budget. The health services improving, the educational services as well. We are, of course, negotiating in terms of opening 2 polyclinics on a 24-hour-a-day basis. All of that to improve the social fabric of this country while we deal with the economic and fiscal problems. So we will overcome, sir. I have no doubt, sir. Barbadians are resilient people. We've been through slavery. We've been through the 1930s and the riots, and we've survived, and we've emerged to the top, sir, under this Barbados Labour Party. We've had to rescue Barbados before, and we will rescue Barbados again with the help of the Lord Almighty and with the help of all Barbadian people who have the stake, the future stake of this country in their hearts, sir. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I am honored to have an opportunity to make a brief intervention in this debate. This is really a very novel thing for us in the life of a Barbados Parliament. I think it is fair to say that we have never been at this kind of juncture or crossroads before. And I imagine that most people, upon coming into office, a newly elected government, 18 new candidates, facing the kind of landscape that presented itself to us, would have driven the average person, I think, to despair. But government is about making choices, as you well know, Mr. Speaker. And we had a choice of despairing and throwing our hands in the air, or we could set about rescuing our fair land. Our administration, sir, chose to roll our sleeves up, not to be daunted by the enormity of the task ahead, and to set about doing what we were elected to do and what we committed to the people of Barbados that we would do. I think it is fair to say that we always anticipated that we would find an economy that had been wrecked by the last administration. But of course, Mr. Speaker, you know sometimes when you go to buy a car, you know that the car in bad shape, but you only realize how bad the shape is when you carry the mechanic and you open the bonnet and find that half of the engine gone. You notice that there are no wheels, and probably the only good thing about the vehicle could be the windscreen wiper. In our country, sir, and everybody who's spoken before me, the professional economists, as well as the amateur economists, everybody has talked about the level of debt that we face. The level of debt that we face. And I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that the average person hears the minister in the Ministry of Finance say the words $1.7 billion in debt, but somehow it doesn't quite sink in what $1.7 billion in debt is. And it's difficult to describe it in terms that I guess would mean an awful lot. I certainly can't think of any single item that you could buy for $1.7 billion. So I think of it in these terms, sir. It is $1.7 billion that we don't have. And when you realize, Mr. Speaker, that it is $1.7 billion that we don't have, then perhaps using a more easily understood analogy would be helpful. Everybody in this chamber has a household. The average Barbadian has a household. If the average Barbadian somehow works for $10,000 a year, he might be able to manage $15,000 in debt, even $20,000 in debt. But if he was told that he owed $1 million in debt, sir, he would not know where to start. And I apologize to the economists for ruining your mathematical symmetries, but I believe it would be good to describe the economy of Barbados as a man who is earning only $10,000 a year, but through no fault of his own, he has discovered that he owes $1 million a year. He does not know where to start. Where would he get it from? But that's what faced us, sir. That's what faced us. We inherited a government that owed more money than the country was earning. I think that would be a correct way of looking at it. And that was owing more money by far than the country was earning. So when we talk about unsustainable debt, it just means, I think, debt that you have no way of paying. So what do you do, sir? Well, we know that we have to make choices which will provide the people of Barbados with the best guarantee for a future. And that choice required us to set about restructuring our debt. And that is what we have come here for. Now, Mr. Speaker, the bill, I admit, is highly technical, and the average person would probably get a bit of a headache reading it. I suppose my job as the person responsible for its drafting is to try to put it in somewhat simpler terms. In any debt restructuring, you can expect, Mr. Speaker, that the people who are owed the money will not be very enthusiastic about coming to the table. If you owe courts, and you go to courts and say to courts, well, you know, I had the fridge for 2 years now, and I owe you $1,500 still, but I want you to take $1,000, courts is likely to put you in debt collector hands real fast, because courts is owed $1,500 and it wants $1,500. But the difficulty is that when you're dealing with a state, a sovereign, those kinds of options are not readily open to you. But equally, a person could say to the courts, well, they don't care, put me in court. Do what you want to do. But a country doesn't have that luxury, because the country still has to keep its roads in working order. At least this government feels so. The last one didn't. We know we still have to keep the hospital functioning and the airport and the seaport, and we still have to keep our children in school and make sure that there's a country to hand over to the next generation. So you are faced, Mr. Speaker, with hostile creditors who want every single penny that you had contractually agreed that they would get. Now, we've been telling the last administration for the longest time that the kind of debt they were racking up was unsustainable and that it would one day bring us to our knees, and that is where we are. So, sir, at this date with destiny, we have creditors who have shareholders, and they're in business to make money. And believe you me, sir, a creditor whose head office is in New York or in Switzerland does not give two hoots about whether Barbados has buses on the road, whether the hospital got medication, or whether we keep the lights on in our schools. They do not care. They did not lend Barbados money out of any feeling of love and affection. It was a straight business deal, and they want what we agreed to pay them. And so, Mr. Speaker, we had to make difficult decisions. And that first decision was that we would default on our debt. Now, that's a bad word, because when you default, it means you don't pay. And you know what happens if you don't pay the bank for the car or the credit card or the house or whatever it is. If you don't pay, that's it. So we took a decision not to pay. But let me put that non-payment in context, Mr. Speaker. We took a conscious decision not to pay our overseas installments. And we took that decision because we knew that had we paid and had we continued to pay, that by now we would have had no foreign exchange at all. None. Not a penny, sir. So Barbados without foreign exchange means what? Can't buy medicine, can't buy oil, can't buy anything. So we had to make that decision so as to ensure that our little foreign exchange could be managed. But let me tell you a tale of another default, Mr. Speaker. And it is a tale that is very much deserving of being told. The last administration defaulted on its debt to NIS. It didn't pay NIS its rents when they fell due. It did not pay NIS the contributions that it was supposed to pay for its employees. It did not pay NIS the refunds of the non-contributory pension that they were supposed to pay. So all of those were defaults. It did not pay the VAT refunds to the businesses. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that a lot of businesses have had to shut down because their cash flow was so irretrievably ruined because they couldn't get VAT refunds. Mr. Speaker, they didn't pay contractors, and not just big ones. They didn't pay the small ones either. So small men who would go and do $10,000 in repairs at a school, he didn't get paid. So when people want to say that the government of Barbados, led by a Barbados Labour Party, defaulted on its debt, let me politely remind you that the Democratic Labour Party had defaulted on all of its debts for years. For years, sir. You don't build up arrears of $1.7 billion overnight. The member for Christchurch South took you through the increase in the national debt year by year, by West, year by year by year by year. And they don't build up in a way that you don't see it, you know. So we took a conscious decision to default, while they just took a whatless and indifferent decision to default. Now, one default, sir. You want to get up on a point of order? Sir,
in relation to your
sir,
word,
I suppose it could be considered, Mr. Speaker.
Let me correct the honourable member for St. Lucie. Given that he wants to rise on that point in relation to the term you just used, what is correct? But that was brought to my attention that is in the also dictionary, in the Caribbean dictionary. It is a term used. The only problem with the term, it can be deemed to be derogatory, but it's actually a word. It's actually a word in Barbadian parlance. It is a word, sir.
Well, sir, I am happy to know that. I am happy to know that it is in Professor also now blessed memories book. But I believe, sir, that Parliament must remember that it exists in the context of a society. And while we're all capable of using lofty expressions, from time to time, sir, it is a little helpful if you give us the leeway, as you have done, to use some expressions that will resonate with the people who are tuned in, sir. But what it does, if you had to translate it, I think it would mean a decision that was reckless, without having regard for whether it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, and without having regard for its consequences. So the Democratic Labour Party, when they sat on this side, had been in default for years. So, Mr. Speaker, let me fast forward, because I promised not to speak for too long. We have now brought a bill which is intended to legislate something called collective action clauses. And it isn't hard to understand. You see, Mr. Speaker, when you go to negotiate with creditors, in order to have an agreement, you're supposed to reach an agreement with all of your creditors. All of your creditors. But, sir, that's not necessarily an easy thing. Because some creditors, we know, recognize that they have a connection to Barbados. I'm not going to put anybody or any entity in an invidious position, but we know that some creditors will, out of a long-term relationship with the country, recognize, I need to do this, and therefore I'm going to work with the government. And some people have said that to us. But there are other creditors who are only focused on the mighty dollar. And unless they get what they are entitled to, they're not interested in our problems. So the thing about a collective action clause, sir, is that it allows a sufficiently large majority, when once you reach an agreement with them, when once you get past that number, that threshold, in this case 75% of yet another figure, when once you get to that figure, then it means that the agreement reached binds those people who were holding out. Now let me say, Mr. Speaker, that the thing about a restructuring is that you don't have the luxury of dawdling. There are decisions that have to be made, and they have to be made with some urgency. So you want to get a restructuring done quickly. I did a little research, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you that Argentina, in 2005, took 42 months to achieve their restructuring. 42 months, sir. Dominica, in 2004, took 15 months to achieve their restructuring. Seychelles in 2009 took 19 months to achieve their restructuring. Greece, 2012, took 11 months to achieve their restructuring. We are trying to do ours in under 4 months. Now, Mr. Speaker, you see, we don't have the luxury of doing it in 5 months. We don't have the luxury of doing it in 6 months. We can't say, let us hold off until Easter. We can't say that, sir. I have constituents who call me today from Parks Road and told me, MP, it was too much to say acting MP. Mr. Speaker, I am on very good terms with my constituent. The MP, we have not had our garbage collected for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, sir. 2 weeks. And I'm sure that around these tables, there are people who can talk about their constituents who may not have had this collected for 4 weeks. And there are individuals who've had to have appointments to have surgeries put off until well into next year. And I have constituents who did not have water to wash or cook with on Sunday morning in Bathsheba. We don't have the luxury, Mr. Speaker, of 5 months. We have 270 or 80,000 people whose lives depend on us entering and achieving this reconstruction program in quick order so that we can bring our society back from the bottom of the barrel. So, sir, a holdout, one bondholder saying, I want all my money, or I'm not agreeing, that can push our 4-month target into 5, 6, 10, 8. So that's impractical, sir. So we are here in Parliament to legislate this collective action clause into existence, so that while we negotiate with our creditors, as we have done in good faith from day one and giving full disclosure, we also know that the business of the survival of our country is more important than their bottom dollar. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, once we reach that threshold, it binds all other creditors. And that is simply what this bill is about. But, sir, there are some people who want to convey the impression that we have been worthless and indifferent, that we have not been caring about the suffering that the average Bajan might experience. Now, let me say, sir, that we've always said sacrifice is required on the part of everybody. Nobody's going to be spared. But let's put that in context. We have increased the non-contributory pension to ensure that such sacrifices they might have to pay or make is a little more bearable. We have removed the university fees to ensure that such sacrifice as those parents might have to make, we've eased a little bit of the burden off. So we've set about trying, sir. The member for St. Michael West talked about the country being broke, we might not even be able to afford the breakfast. I want to tell him, sir, that we've already given the people of Barbados the breakfast. You see, sir, we did not wait to do the restructuring, then to hold out little porridge or oats. The old age pensioners got their first increase, I believe it was in July. The university students have already started school at community college and at Carefield campus, and all the other campuses, law school, Mona, St. Augustine, they've already started without that yoke around their neck, sir. So that was not idle promise on our part. We kept our promise to the people first. So, sir, the point is therefore that we also knew that in as much as sacrifice would be required, that we still had to look out for the individuals. And I have great respect for the member for St. Michael West, and I am sure that he looked at the bill and at the schedule, but my parents, sir, probably didn't get a chance to read it. And other individuals probably didn't get a chance to read it. So let me tell the country what the member for St. Michael West didn't tell them. And perhaps I should apologize to him because he only got the bill today. Let me say to the honourable member that we criticized the Democratic Labour Party when they were last in power for bringing bills and giving us notice of them late. But there were two things. Thank you very much for that. Firstly, none of those things were urgent. Not one of them was ever urgent. None of them had $171.7 billion writing on them. Not one, sir. Not one of them was in a position to transform either the Barbadian economy or the Barbadian society. Not one of them, sir. This bill is something the like of which very few countries in the world have ever had to put in place. And it took us night and day, night and day, night and day to get it right. And I believe, sir, that we've got it right. But we didn't get it right 2 weeks ago. We only won the election on the 24th of May. We got it right this week. We got it right this week. And I apologize to you, sir. But I don't feel bad about it, because there are sacrifices that we have to make in order to bring about the greater good for our country. So let me get the point, sir. People are talking about how the pensioners will be suffering, and how the individuals are going to be suffering, sir. Well, sir, this is not a choice between a sacrifice and a little, or getting all your money. It doesn't work like that. This is not a choice, sir, between getting most or getting all. The stark reality is that this is a choice between getting back most or getting none. That's it, sir. Because we owe people $1.7 billion that we do not have, and struggling to try to find a way to get it, sir. So all we're saying is, let us give you a little less at this point. Because if you don't allow us to give you a little less at this point, then you're putting us in a position where we won't be able to give you any at all. Plain and simple. This is a choice between sacrifice or the total collapse of this state. So all of the wonderful, high-sounding, sacerdotal, meaning priestly, sir, I know you're on it, musings of the member for St. Michael West, and I respect him greatly, sir, I cannot take any of that to the bank, nor can the Minister of Finance. And the Irish used to say 300 years ago, pray and have faith, but make sure and plant potatoes. So, the member for St. Michael West, and I love him dearly, sir. Yes. They like to hear his soothing voice. I'm thinking of starting to go to his church. I can get it for 9:30, sir. I can get it for 9:30. But the point is, sir, that hard decisions had to be made. It is either take some of your money or risk getting none of your money. Plain and simple. But what have we done to protect the pensioners, sir? We've said that the pensioners, they have to take a little bit of a haircut too. And for those who are listening, a haircut isn't a fashion statement. It just means that you get a little less back than you had planned to. And it's to be distinguished between getting a bath, in which case you don't get back nothing at all. So we avoiding the bath, and Bajans will only get a haircut, sir. So the pensioners under this scheme, and it's set out in part 1 of the schedule, normally, sir, they would get interest on their bonds paid twice a year. That's not going to happen anymore. They're not going to get any interest between this year and September of 2019, December of 2019. So we're saying to them, you work hard for the country, but help us to save it now. So you will get nothing on your bonds until December of 2019. Give us that year. But as of December of 2019, sir, you will begin to get principal and interest back in your hand. For that first year after deferral, the interest is very low, 1%. But every year after that, or every group of years after that, the interest rises until at its highest, I think it will get to, is it 10%? 10.88% at the very end. But every year you will get back from the Central Bank of Barbados a small amount of interest and some of your principal. Now, when the fine economists in the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank work it out, they're able to say to Barbadians that at the end of the 15 years, you will have gotten back absolutely all of your principal. Every penny of your principal you will have gotten back. And, Mr. Speaker, you will have gotten back about 75% of the interest that you would have got were it not for this restructuring. Now, sir, I don't think that any country in the world could do better than that, sir. You're getting back all of your principal, and you're getting most of the interest that you were promised. And there are even some novel things in there which allows you to cash in some and so on. I'm not going to go into those niceties. The point is, for pensioners, we've said, take it for a year, but after that you will start to get back interest, not just interest alone, which is what happens now. You will get back interest and a chunk of your principal every year for the next 15 years. And for the individuals, sir, because we haven't forgotten them, the individuals, well, we need 4 years from them, not 1. So people like you, Mr. Speaker, we need 4 years from you.
I'm not in that category. I'm not fortunate enough.
You're in the category of institutions, sir. Institutions get hit hard. But for individuals, the people who, you know, have had disposable income and in the 30s and 40s and 50s want to get new government bonds, and we've always encouraged that, they have to give us 4 years. 4 years before they get anything. But at the end of that 4 years, sir, they too start to get back principal and interest. And they too, over the life of the bond, will get all of their principal back and most of the interest. Now, sir, so those people who think that we callously did this to the old people and callously did this to the investors, sir, the individual investors, sir, are wrong. We've worked it out and we've tried to do the best that we can for them. All that they're going to lose is a little bit of the interest. We wish it wasn't so, sir. But the alternative is to continue to run these high deficits, and the country will continue to spiral downward, 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 to the point where we become a failed state, sir, and nobody gets anything. Now, sir, as I wrap up my own comment, because I'm not wrapping up the debate, we have two real economists after me, sir. There are some people, including the member for St. Michael West, who have sought to raise the issue of the fees that were paid to the consultants. And no disrespect intended, I think that sometimes a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And when you have a little knowledge but not all the knowledge, you come to conclusions, sir, that really are not reasonable. Now let me say this to the member for St. Michael West and anybody else in the country who feels that the Barbados Labour Party has gone on a gallop and hired some people from over in the way to come and do this work so we could pay them a bereft of money. Let me say two things, sir. If the member for St. Michael West were mortally wounded and went to the QEH, he would not say to the QEH administration, look, thing a little short on cash, send the intern to see me. He wouldn't do it, sir. He was paying every penny that he could find. You don't want to see the orderly call. The orderly come a little too late. But he will spare no expense to save his own life, sir. None. And I feel that our cabinet was in exactly that position when we got elected. We could have gone around and tried to negotiate with cut rate people who don't have experience. Somebody could run and say, man, we could do this cheaper for you. Not with the country of Barbados at stake. Mr. Speaker, we paid for the best that money could buy. And we want.
Yes, Honourable Member for St. Michael West. Your point of order.
I love him dearly as well,
Point of order, sir.
I ain't got to church.
but I think he's
You gotta help me guard up on Sunday morning.
misleading us somewhat. I did not in any way cast the government for spending money to buy good services embodied in consultants. In fact, I praise a number of those who make up the economic team. I simply ask, and I said, I am unenlightened, and I know a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So could you please tell us what you're paying, not Dr. Clyde Maskell, because he deserves every cent he's getting, but other persons categorized as senior advisors to the government of Barbados at this time. All I'm asking for is information for the people out there.
I'm sorry.
So tell us that.
Thank you, sir. So we have decided to buy the best that we could buy.
Tell us what the best would be.
Because these services, sir, are not found locally. They're not even found regionally, sir. We needed experts. Okay? Let me tell the member for St. Michael West this. I'm not at liberty at this point. In due course, everybody will know what fees were paid. But at this point, I'm not at liberty to say. But let me tell you this. We hired the finest lawyer in the world on sovereign debt restructuring. The finest lawyer in the world on sovereign debt restructuring is working for the government of Barbados to save this country from having to find $1.7 billion. You know what, sir? The fees for his firm for the entire life of this engagement is less, Mr. Speaker, than the fees of a certain QC associated with the Democratic Labour Party last election, who walked up and down this country with a t-shirt marked LEC. Because, sir, that member, that member of the legal profession, sir, let me tell you what he charged the government. Let me tell you what he charged the government. That gentleman sent an invoice to a company called Clearwater Bay Limited. That's the company, Mr. Speaker, that is owned by the government that owns Four Seasons. On the 16th of September 2014, that QC from Hartford Chambers, Roebuck Street, ironically opposite the Barbados Labour Party headquarters almost.
Obliquely.
Obliquely.
Yes. No opposite.
Sent an invoice which had only 7 lines stay. A 7-line invoice, sir. Had on that. And this is what the invoice said, sir. In respect of all work done in advising the Ministry of Economic Affairs on the recovery of US $60 million invested by government by way of debenture of 7th March 2011, and all other matters attendant to the recovery of that investment, including negotiating for the prospective buyout with various interested parties and the final negotiation with the individual purchasers for Licipol Inc. Fee, 1.1% of $120 million. $1.2 million that lawyer charged. I hope the Minister of Finance will tell us, sir, if the money was recovered. Because as far as I recollect, the government gave out money yet. Government gave out money yet. But this fine gentleman is charging more for work that he didn't do, for work that the Ministry of Finance cannot see a penny from. He's charging more than the finest legal mind in the world working on our restructuring. And then they had another lawyer, sir. DLP, it doesn't have to be member for Michael West. When these things were happening, he was a member of the Barbados Labour Party. They had another lawyer, sir. He about 4'5".
That's Michael, yeah, what you talking
I remember you don't stop disturbing the speaker, the man. No. This is not different lawyer. But that particular lawyer charged the government of Barbados. You know, I don't like to call these figures. And this is my Memphis and Michael West. I know the Memphis and Michael West has confidence in our side. He can't help but. But there are some people who have said what he said. Okay, talking about the fees that we paying the consultants to save this country. And a certain DLP lawyer worked on a piece of transaction that did not come anywhere near being completed. And between November of last year, sir, and May 23rd of this year, that lawyer charged the government of Barbados $2.5 million in legal fees, sir. Let me tell you, Memphis and Michael West, that the total fees, legal and professional, for our restructuring, sir, is less than the amount of money that particular lawyer charged the government of Barbados between November last year and...
Yes, sir.
Is inadvertently misleading the chamber. It is not that the gentleman that he was speaking about charged 2.5 million. He charged more than 2.5 million, but he received 2.5 million.
Point of order.
Clarification. I just pick a period. He actually charged $3.15 million. And all of it was paid, sir. All of it was paid. But I'm just saying that the amount of work that our entire team of consultants will be putting in and be paid is less than what that particular DLP lawyer charged the government of Barbados, sir, in 6 months. And you know the shameful thing is, sir? Every invoice got marked on it, please expedite for payment.
Yes. Can't pay finance.
Please expedite, even the one that came the day before election day.
But that was the election.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Speaker, point of order, the Honourable Acting Prime Minister continues to mislead this House a little bit. The Honourable Member who sits in this chair has not criticized the government for paying and buying in good services. For the very reasons that the Honourable Member is citing, the misdeeds of the last administration with respect to fees charged and paid. For that very reason, I'm simply asking the government to respond to the concerns that I hear out there as to payment to one or two of the consultants that no serve. That is all, based on that very same thing.
Mr. Speaker, let me say then, I am happy that the Honourable Member for St. Michael West is not criticizing the government on the buying of these professional services. And I don't want guilty lily, sir, but just, if you will allow me one more, please. Another DLP lawyer, sir, sent an invoice to the same Clearwater Bay. Remember I said, the first one I said was a certain QC sent an invoice dated 6th of September 2014. 6th of September 2014, sir. Would you believe, sir, that only 2 weeks later, another DLP lawyer sent the same company a bill for legal services?
The same thing too.
I don't understand. $1.527 million. So one day, they get a bill for 1.2 plus VAT. And then only 2 weeks later, they get a bill from another lawyer for 1.3 plus VAT, sir. This bill is a little bit longer than the first bill. This bill has 25 one-line bullet points of the work that was done, sir. Now, just follow me carefully. It ain't hard. So when you do a bill, you set up what you do. Now, you should really praise each thing that you do. But the good gentleman put everything at the bottom. $1.3 million. Bullet point number 1, sir. It is headed correspondence. And it refers to a letter that he sent to somebody. Bullet point number 2. This says reviewing correspondence. Bullet point number 3, perusing correspondence. Bullet point number 4, I say going 25 bullet points and it's $1.3 million. Bullet point number 4, correspondence to the Minister of Finance. You could have called Chris Sinclair. We bought it right for. Bullet point number 5, placing advertisements in the Advocate and the Nation. Bullet point number 6, attending meeting of Board of Directors. Bullet point number 7, we come back to correspondence. Bullet point number 8, placing more advertisements in the Advocate and Daily Nation. Well, then he reviews an offer, he reviews a memo, he reviews a board paper, but then we come back to the ever so popular correspondence. Reviewing correspondence from the permanent secretary. I hope that by the end, divide $1.3 million by 25 from that time what we figure is. And then the next bullet point, reviewing more correspondence. Next bullet point, reviewing correspondence. Next bullet point, correspondence. Third, next bullet point, reviewing correspondence. Oh, sir, he reviewed more correspondence. I mean, sir, and he charged this company 2 weeks after the first invoice, $1.3 million, sir. Sir, if we had that money now, sir, we wouldn't be trying to do this. You know how many buses $1.3 million could buy?
Together, man.
And the SSA got an invoice for $5.8 million for Cahill.
And BWA from the same QC, 1.4.
I mean, sir, I hope that nobody in the Democratic Labour Party ever raises their voice to talk about the cost of professional services for anything. But what is more important, sir, is that every penny that we have paid so far has shown this country deliverables. Record negotiation with the IMF, unheard of anywhere in the world, sir. Mr. Speaker, I conclude. This is a journey that we have to make together. But we can only ever go as fast as the slowest person, as fast as the weakest person, as fast as the poorest and neediest person. No matter how wealthy the man at the end of the spectrum is, if all of Barbados beneath him is mired in poverty and desperation, he has stopped living in a paradise and he lives in the same mess that the poorest live in. So as a country, we've tried to tailor this program so that we can all move forward together at the same pace. The institutional investors, I know that they hate what we're doing. And if I were them, I would hate it too, sir. But we were not elected by any commercial bank. We were not expected, sir, to safeguard the interests of any foreign entity. A couple of 100,000 people went into a polling station on the 24th of May. And they reached out to us. And they asked us to rescue them. And every single day since the 24th of May, we have been working on that. And I think that we've made good progress. But in order to be able to go the rest of the way, this is vital. And to my constituents who have received these letters, I urge you, sir, through you, Mr. Speaker, I urge you to complete that act of faith that you started on the 24th of May. On the 24th of May, you saw something in a team of BLP people who came to you and said, we got this. Well, not then. we said, give me the vote and watch, right? But on that day, you started something. So don't get scared now and abandon ship. All aboard means something. It means something. So whatever you started then, when that letter comes to you, it's already come to you, sir. Look at it. And sign saying that you accept the proposal. Because we need you, every single mother and father and cousin and dad and child, every single individual in Barbados who has the smallest to the largest bond with the central bank. We need you to say, we are making this journey with you. Not just because of us, but because if we don't save this country, then our lives aren't worth living. Accept the offer. Agree to roll over. Because the choice is not between some and all. The choice is between some or nothing. Let us complete that act of faith. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Michael, South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry.
After the interventions that we had today, it is almost redundant for me to rise. But I have to give my support for this bill, to give my support to my colleague, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, who, in 2.5 hours of a masterful intervention, took us through the particulars of what is before us today. But I want to fall back a bit to the beginning, where he started, to take us on a bit of a journey about where we are coming from, where we find ourselves, and why we find ourselves here having to do the very necessary. Because the fact is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that a country in the position in which Barbados finds itself, or should I say, a country that has been brought to its knees, as Barbados has been by the last Democratic Labour Party administration, has before it a certain range of options, but they are limited. And as much as I am a development economist whose main focus in the practice of my economics is the well-being of people, and so in that regard, as much as I, along with the team, have done the necessary work with the necessary rigor to look at the social impact and content of our economic policy, and the Honourable Member for St. Michael West, I hope, will be encouraged to hear that, and I will get to what that has shown us in a while. As much as that is the case, the fact remains that in an economy such as ours, the size of ours that has been brought through what we have been brought through, we have limited options. The last Democratic Labour Party administration left us with limited options. But be that as it may, we have been able to be very creative with the options before us. And I will get to that in a while as well. But I want to fall back a bit to talk about what brought us here. And what brought us here was the fact that the previous administration borrowed as much as they could, as often as they could, from as many people as they could. They first borrowed from local banks. And when the local banks stopped willingly lending to the government, to the last administration, they went to the foreign banks. And when after downgrade after downgrade after downgrade, amounting to 22, the foreign banks lost their appetite for this kind of risk, lost their appetite for exposure to this kind of profligacy and recklessness, when it became too expensive to borrow from the foreign banks, the last government then went to the NIS. But then when they stopped making payments to the NIS, putting the position of the fund at risk, and they no longer had those options, they started, through the express blessing and will of the then governor of the central bank, to print money to the tune of $50 million a year, so that today the central bank holds $2 billion in treasury bills. And all of that affected the state of our foreign reserves. And there's a picture that is burnt into my mind, Mr. Speaker, sir, as my colleagues and I have sat night after night for the last 2 years, going over these numbers and coming up with what became the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan. There is an image that is burnt into my mind. And that image describes the rate of decline of the foreign reserves in Barbados. And the truth is that the election of May 24th acted like a basket, sir. It acted like a net to catch the economy of Barbados, because had it not been for that date with destiny that the people of Barbados kept, the reserves would have continued to slide and slide and slide until zero, at which point we could have said goodbye to the fixed exchange rate. That is the path that has led us here today. That is why we have to restructure our debt, because the old debt is not affordable. We cannot continue to pay it. We do not have the wherewithal to continue to service 7.5% of our GDP in interest payments, over a third of our revenue. We cannot do it. That is what unsustainable debt means. But there was another place, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the government of Barbados, the then Democratic Labour Party administration, borrowed money, and that was from the people of Barbados. So a government bond or a government debenture is a loan to the government that pays a certain amount of interest. And my esteemed colleague, the member for Christchurch East Central, explained it at the beginning of the day, and as we wind down, I will seek to explain it again, because I think it is important for people to understand what they are losing and what they are not losing, to understand that they can still hold on to the majority of the value of their investment. And so I'm going to take us through it. So you give the government money, and the government pays you interest on that money, and then after a specified time, repays you the principal at the end of the period. So I want to use an example, sir, to talk about what this debt restructuring means for the individual lenders to the government. So if you, as an individual pensioner, have a 5-year debenture that is worth $10,000, that debenture would have been earning about 6.75% in interest. So that means that once a year, you get a check from the government for $675. And at the end of that 5 years, the government has to pay you back the original $10,000 that you lent to the government of Barbados. Because of where the last Democratic Labour Party administration has brought us, you heard the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs say the words, Barbados is insolvent. And as much as they would seek to flagellate him for what he was pressed to do in a former life, as a good public servant, he is telling the people of Barbados the truth. So the government of Barbados is not now in a position to pay back on schedule based on the terms of that 5-year debenture. So what are we doing? We are converting the 5-year bond into a 15-year instrument. And rather than just paying the interest, the $675 a year that you would have gotten on that $10,000, and then repaying the principal as a lump sum at the end of the term, we are paying both interest and principal spread out over that period. And this is going to mean two things. First, it's going to mean that you don't have to wait the 5 years to start getting back some of your principal. You don't have to wait the 5 years to see whether government will be in a position to pay. You don't have to have the level of uncertainty during the period that certainly Barbadians would have had under the last government. And it also means that you're getting a boost in your cash flow. So that despite the reduction in interest rates, you are seeing more year on year than you would have seen otherwise. And what does it mean? It means that the interest payments are stepping up over the period. So yes, between now and December 2019, you will not receive an interest payment. But by the first year following December 2019, you will start to receive not just the principal, but increased interest over the period. So that in fact, rather than receiving the $675 that you might have received, you would be receiving, for example, $800 in that first payment. And those payments are moving from a single payment every year to quarterly payments so that you have more consistent cash flow. And I thought it important to say that, Mr. Speaker, sir, because as the Honourable Acting Prime Minister said, a little knowledge is dangerous. But the profession of having a little knowledge and holding up one's hands and saying, oh, dear me, well, it's just that I don't understand, also allows us to hide behind the shroud of ignorance and to suggest that not enough information is being shared. I don't know anyone who's doing it, but if one were to do it, that would be what one might be doing. And so in the interest of full disclosure, which has been from the beginning, the mode of operation of this Barbados Labour Party administration, we are putting all the cards on the table. And we are coming with a full explanation of what this means for individual bondholders. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are forced to undertake this debt restructuring because a consolidation alone, increases in revenue, cuts in expenditure alone could not fill the gap. In June of this year, sir, reserves were at $220 million. And the total debt service that was due in that month was $100 million. And half of it was owed to external creditors. So I want us to dispel this notion that all of this could have been done with a domestic restructuring and we did not have to go external. We made a choice that was necessary because by the time the election had been delayed so long, so that people whose pockets were already fat could fatten them some more. Contracts were signed and checks signed for all kinds of reasons on the 23rd of May. Knowing full well that the people of Barbados had not yet had the opportunity to say how they wanted those tax dollars spent. Half of the $100 million due in June was owing to external creditors. If we had paid the full debt service for June, we would have lost half of the reserves. And I want to draw a parallel, Mr. Speaker, sir, with another country, another sovereign state that has gone through this, and it is Seychelles. The Honourable Attorney General, the Acting Prime Minister, mentioned it in his intervention. In 2008, Seychelles saw a fiscal and balance of payments crisis that was also similarly aggravated by a severe debt overhang. And debt was projected to reach 150% of GDP by the following year. Not yet approaching the 171% of GDP that we currently stand at if we account for the arrears that this Democratic Labour Party administration racked up. Seychelles' reserves were nearly exhausted, sir, and the country's rating was selective default. In 2008, sir, Seychelles was called on to make a debt payment of $10 million. A Eurobond payment that was coming due. And you know how much they had in reserve, sir? $10 million. I say that, sir, to say that governments often have to make difficult choices. And we are coming off the trauma, sir, the 10-year trauma of a Democratic Labour Party government whose only strategy was to kick the can farther and farther down the road until they came to the end of the road. Not just they came to the end of the road, but then the can explode. Because that's the only place they could have been leading us. And so Seychelles restructured their debt. They went through a lot of the same processes that we are having to go through, including having to have collective action clauses in place as we are debating in this chamber today, sir. And in 2 years, within 2 years of their declaring their default, Seychelles had restored debt sustainability to the country and was accessing international capital markets again. So for those who would suggest, sir, that there is no way out of this, I want to assure the people of Barbados through you, sir, that with the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister and this economic team and our fellow cabinet members and members of this House, there is a way out of this. And we are leading Barbados out of this, and we will get out of this. This is what we have unfortunately and regrettably been preparing for. We did not wait to come to government on the 25th of May to start scratching our heads and wondering what to do so that we could get up in this honourable chamber as the last Minister of Finance did and ask in despair, well, what would you have me do? That is not our strategy. Despair is not a strategy, and it is not one that we plan to employ in leading the good people of this country. The fixed exchange rate, sir, is important to Barbados. A fixed exchange rate is important to a country like ours for the stability there is not much that we export. And so I find that there has been this overemphasis on whatever imagined benefit could be derived from liberalizing the exchange rate. We do not need to do it. And we have committed, as part of the social partnership, that Barbados as a country is holding on to its fixed exchange rate, is holding on to the stability that that brings us because we cannot afford not to. I want to say further, sir, make a very simple point. And that point is this. While much has been made of the length of the adjustment program that the fund is supporting, the part of the BERT program that the fund is supporting, the plan is endorsed by the fund, but it is supported by the fund in the sense that they are bringing balance of payment support in the amount of around 290 million. But they're not the only ones supporting the plan. But I want to say, sir, that the adjustment period will end. Unlike the last Democratic Labour Party administration that came with plan after plan and budget after budget and promised you that this consolidation was going to work this time, you know, it reminds me of, I mean, I've never experienced it myself, but I hear my girlfriends talk about it. I don't have any experience with it, but it would remind one of an errant partner who keeps coming back and asking for another chance. I don't know what that is like, but I understand that some have had the misfortune. But that is what one would have been reminded of, and after a while, you know, some people will get Stockholm syndrome and start to feel like, oh, they can't do any better, but thankfully, the people of Barbados proved that they could do better, that better could be done on May 24th, overwhelmingly so. But the point I'm making, sir, is that a fiscal adjustment plan that is responsibly implemented will end and bear results. And so we will be judged on those results. The Barbados Labour Party makes promises, yes, but further keeps its promises, and further invites you to judge us on our performance. And we are open to it. We are happy to subject ourselves to it because that is what accountability of government is about. The last Democratic Labour Party administration had a habit of shifting and hiding expenditure. That's what they did. That is what characterized their 10 years in office, sir. They shifted expenditure from wages and salaries to make it look nice because they knew that that external eyes were looking at the wages and salaries component to see whether it was moving or whether it was reducing. And they said, okay, well, we want to make you feel like we are doing what we need to do and we are reducing our expenditure, so we will shift the wages and salaries. They did that in part by sending home 3,000. But then, what did they do? They shifted that expenditure to the transfers and subsidies element. Because they brought back in people under cover of night, in some of the state-owned entities. And further, you know, the exercise that we had to go through as a new government in really looking at what is the true cost of government was a really eye-opening one. Because this last government saw accumulated arrears. So that they could, I remember the former Minister of Finance, getting all gleeful and happy about the fact that he was going to bring a balanced budget. You know how he was able to bring a balanced budget? Because he won't pay the people. You can bring any kind of balanced budget. You can balance a budget any day of the week and twice on Sundays if you accumulate arrears to the tune of 1.7 billion. And in the accumulation of those arrears, you are strangling the economy. You know why so many businesses have closed, Mr. Speaker, sir? Why so many small businesses have not been able to function? Because regrettably, they depend on those VAT refunds. So you, on the one hand, are claiming to be the Minister of Finance, trying to stimulate growth, and then on the other, you make it so that the bread and butter of this country, people's livelihoods, cannot thrive. And so, as part of our exercise, as part of our formulation of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, we had to find out, well, what is the true cost of government? Because you allocate a certain amount to the Sanitation Service Authority or to the NCC, knowing full well that they cannot operate on such a small budget. Knowing full well that public services will suffer. Knowing full well that people will not have their garbage collected. Knowing full well that roads will not be fixed, that drains will not be cleared, that people's areas will flood, that if there were to be a hurricane or an extreme weather event, that people's lives would be in danger. Knowing all of that so that you could get a balanced budget and feel good. But this government is not about patting ourselves on the back. This Barbados Labour Party government is about taking care of people and being honest with them in the process. And so when we really calculated what government costs, we came up with a number that looked different from the number that would have been there before. But we need to know what it costs to run this country, what it costs to provide services to people. And we put that,
I remember, has 2 more minutes.
In our estimation. I want to say too, sir, that while the commercial banks will indeed undergo some difficulty, the fact is, and I need to re-emphasize this because again, we need to address the questions that are being planted so as to seek to discredit what we are trying to do. The stress test that we performed said, not that banks may not take a loss. Our responsibility to the financial system is to make sure that they will continue to be solvent and continue to be sufficiently capitalized, and we have satisfied ourselves, and our partners have satisfied themselves, that that will be the case. We have never purported to represent that banks would not take any loss. So by the very nature of what we are doing, we are asking them to accept the loss. We're asking them, along with labor, we are asking capital to also share in the burden. We are not hiding that. But there's a reason we do the stress test, and there's a reason that partners who are looking to support the BERT plan ask us to do that. And we are satisfied, and they are satisfied, that they will be able to survive, that people will be able to have confidence in the financial system, confidence that was not arguably in place before under this last uncertain administration. But I want to say quickly in the time that I have remaining, sir, is that this government is also going beyond the tax and spend that really seem to be the only tools of the last administration, to use all of the powers of government, the legislative powers, the regulatory powers of government to provide a platform for growth. And to create the platform as well, sir, for economic enfranchisement. I want to say, sir, that what we are doing here now, we are not doing because the fund said or anybody else said. We need to get government fit for purpose. We need to create a public sector that is able to deliver in the third decade of the 21st century. That is the work that we are doing here. We are not tinkering with numbers for the sake of it. We are trying to give Barbados and Barbadians their best chance at success, and if we do not do it, there will be no chance of success. We have to call these things as they are. And so what have we talked about? We are not saying that there will not be any displacement of people. It certainly won't be the $4,000 or $5,000 people that the former governor of the central bank would have us in a very lazy approach to consolidation.
Do y'all remember waiting up, please?
Would have us do. But it is to say that even in those cases where people are displaced, sir, that we are making available enfranchisement programs that include, for example, making available agricultural land, that include making available government goods and services contracts of $250,000 and below, that include retraining and retooling to the tune of $30 million a year. So I want to close by saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the bill before us is about asking all Barbadians to stay with us on this journey. It took 10 years to almost destroy this economy. It is not going to take us 10 years to rescue it, but it will take some time. But what we have committed to, sir, is bringing all Barbadians along, and that is what this bill is about.
Do y'all remember waiting up, please?
So I want to say, sir, that I fully support this measure, and I want to encourage Barbadians to follow up on that confidence that you gave us on May 24th, to continue listening to us and talking to us, because we are committed to the complete well-being and to the path of success for Barbados and all Barbadians. And together, we will do it. With those few words, sir, I am obliged to.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I want to wholeheartedly thank my colleagues who participated in this debate today, because the matter before us was quite an important one, and certainly as I seek to bring this debate to its conclusion, I want to also, through you, sir, encourage every Barbadian between now and the end of the offer period on October 5th to go through very carefully again, the offer of exchange that they would have received as holders of Barbados of government securities, and reflect, sir, on the messages that we would have sent to the country from this chamber today as to the need, sir, for why this comprehensive debt restructuring is important to put Barbados back on a track and a trajectory where growth can return and our debt can once again be deemed as sustainable. I wish to reiterate, sir, that in this process, as we sought to bring a measure of order and conclusion to it, that this bill, as presented, only makes sense in the context that the time that we have to start to put this country back together that we needed to ensure that there is a process, sir, that allows the government to function, and it allows the people of Barbados and those who wish to do business with Barbados to have a platform of relative certainty with respect to how we intend to implement the comprehensive debt restructuring. Now, sir, we do not ever want to come back to this place again to talk about debt in such a manner. And so we took the time today, sir, to make sure that Barbadians, the length and breadth of this country, and those living abroad, and certainly those who make Barbados their home, who may not be Barbadians, to know that this government is committed to rescuing this economy, improving the lives of ordinary Barbadians such that confidence shall return. Now, sir, I just want to reiterate as we seek to wrap up this debate to emphasize to all Barbadians that holders of savings bonds, of Government of Barbados savings bonds, will be exempt from the terms of these restructuring, from this debt restructuring. What that means, sir, is that those persons shall receive in full interest, in full, as well as their principal in full, sir, for anyone who holds Government of Barbados savings bonds, sir. I wish also to reiterate that whilst the debt held by the central bank is not eligible to be included in the voting process, sir, in the voting process, that the debt held by the central bank is also included, sir, in the terms and conditions of this restructuring. So whilst they do not get to vote, sir, they too have to share in the sacrifice that the rest of the people and the other financial entities in this country will also have to share. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that from the Ministry of Finance's perspective, sir, through you, that a lot of what we are hearing with respect to the financial institutions, we have to be mindful, sir, that financial institutions have a fiduciary responsibility, sir, to make sure that persons who deposit funds into their institutions, that their responsibility, sir, is also to make sure that they protect those funds. And as we would have experienced, certainly with the previous administration, with downgrade after downgrade, that financial institutions would have sought to run from investing the deposits in longer-term securities simply because they were unsure as to whether they would get the monies back, and move to shorter-term securities, sir. And whilst I know that financial institutions, and especially banks, have had a rough time with respect to public perception, sir, because the fees that are being charged in this country, sir, are exorbitant, sorry. And obviously the public is unhappy with respect to what they're getting through their banking services at the moment. But the reality is, sir, that that fiduciary responsibility that banks have to exercise every single day meant that as the credit quality of the Government of Barbados diminished significantly, sir, their shift from long-term securities to short-term securities would have been the only way that a responsible financial institution could certainly expect to behave, given that the credit quality of the Government of Barbados was in real question. And so therefore, sir, throughout these negotiations, the financial institutions and certainly the banks, sir, have expressed a clear view that having made that choice, sir, having made that choice, that just in January of this year, the previous government would have endorsed a plan, because nothing can happen in this country unless cabinet approves. But the previous government would have approved, sir, a plan which saw that the central bank increase, sir, the reserve requirement for treasury bills on commercial banks, which meant that they had to double, sir, the allotment of treasury bills that they were forced to buy. And so therefore, a lot of the angst, sir, that we have been experiencing with respect to the banks is related to the fact that it is almost as if, sir, they were double-crossed. And to the extent that we now have to make sure, sir, that we work out this debt restructuring, I think it's important to point out to the public that nobody is going to feel good, sir. Nobody feels good when you're forced into a position where you have to do something. And so we are seeking to bring a resolution here, sir, that brings some order to which we start to look at how we manage our debt, how we're going to work this out. And so they feel aggrieved, sir. They feel aggrieved that at a time when they were seeking to, in a sense, be responsible in their fiduciary duties by seeking to only expose the depositors to shorter-term exposure for government, that they were forced to purchase more. And so to the extent, sir, that the treasury bills have been included in this restructuring process, sir, it is at this particular point that we are getting the most pushback. And the truth is, sir, it is reasonable. But without restructuring the treasury bill, sir, we will not achieve the level of debt sustainability that we wish to achieve in the shortest period of time. And so therefore I want to assure the country through you, sir, that the Ministry of Finance and the government, of course, will work to make sure that investment opportunities start to return to this country as quickly as possible, such that monies that people work hard for, sir, can find alternative means of investment so that persons in this country can get a return on that investment without feeling exposed, sir, to some future government that may be just as irresponsible as the previous government. And so I want to say, sir, that this road has been it feels long. It's been a short one, but it feels long. But we have engaged, sir. We have engaged, we have engaged, we have engaged. We've had some very, very, very robust discussions, sir, back and forth with all our creditors. And as you can imagine, sir, nobody wants to know that they're going to lose some of the interest that they would have put up, that they were expecting to get, given the plans that they had. And so this process, as we seek to bring to some measure of conclusion, such that we can all move forward, sir, with certainty that there will be order within the management of the public finances of this country. And so, sir, I encourage all financial institutions, credit unions, banks, insurance companies, the finance companies, to look at what Barbados has been able to deliver for them over the past few years that they were operating here. And to recognize that this is an opportunity, sir, for a reset in this country. It is an opportunity to help rebuild, sir, this country. And in rebuilding this country, sir, their level of profitability and the return on their investment for their shareholders, sir, will be enhanced simply because the conditions, sir, the conditions for growth, the conditions for debt sustainability, sir, will be strong and robust again, such that confidence at all levels, sir, consumers, businesses, and investors, sir, shall return to those days when you could have bought any security of government forgot about it, and the monies will appear in your bank account without you having to monitor it as closely as persons have had to do in the last few years. This does not mean, sir, that people should become complacent going forward. We believe, sir, that as we go through this exercise, and certainly as has happened in the past, that the time is now to make sure that Barbadians are able to see the signals, sir, the signals of irresponsible management, whether in government or in the private sector, sir, and are in a position to take the appropriate action early enough, sir, so as to avoid any of this recurring in people's lives. And sir, as we seek really to bring this to a close, I never thought, sir, in my lifetime that Barbados would be restructuring its debt, but we are here now. And we are committed, sir, to running the most fiscally responsible government ever in the history of Barbados. And we shall set the standard, sir, to make sure that we put the appropriate mechanism in place that does not allow for institutional recklessness to take place, which will compromise, sir, the very quality of life that we expect to live in this country, sir. The message is, I believe, sir, is simple for the people of Barbados to receive. This government, sir, is fixing the ills and the problems of this country. And in so doing, we're asking everybody to share in the burden. And in sharing the burden, sir, we certainly expect that once the bounty returns, sir, that everybody will equally share in that bounty. But we cannot get there, sir, unless, sir, we tighten our belts and we stay focused on the mission objectives. The mission objective, sir, is clear. We have to maintain the value of our fixed exchange rate. Of that, we are all agreed. We must provide opportunities for ordinary Barbadians to earn a living, one, and in so doing, be able to make investments to improve the lives of their families. We have to improve the provision of goods and services of government, and we must create the environment, sir, where Barbados can become world-class. And I'm confident, sir, that under the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, sir, that we shall do so. But this debt restructuring is a very critical component of us being able to deliver, sir, on our promise to make a better life for all our people. And so, sir, I'm happy to support this bill once again, and I ask, sir, that, Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do not leave the chair. Sorry. Sorry, sir. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be read a second time. Sorry.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Pedro.
Question is that the Speaker now leave the chair and that the Honourable Chamber resolve itself into committee. Those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Second, please.
Question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
Question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
Question is that clause 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 5 stand part.
Question is that clause 5 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 6 stand part.
Question is that clause 6 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
There's only 6.
All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Madam Chair, I wish to indicate an amendment to Series C of Part 2 of the second schedule to indicate that the natural disaster clause is to apply to all bonds. So Series C should indicate yes for natural disaster clause and not no as indicated on page 14 of the bill.
The schedule, second schedule as amended.
So I beg to move that with the amendment that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill as amended.
The question is that with the amendment, the second schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
With amendment. With amendment.
The question is, I now report to the Speaker the passing of one bill. All honorable members in favor. Pardon?
With amendment.
With amendment. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say no.
Yes.
Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
Question does this bill now be read a third time? Those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Debt Holder Approval of Debt Restructuring Act 2018.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be now passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. This bill is now passed and so cited.
This brings us to the end of government business for the day. I beg, therefore, to move that this Honourable House now adjourn until Tuesday, the 9th of October at 10 o'clock.
Question is that this Honourable Chairman be adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th of October 2018 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber is adjourned until Tuesday, 9th of October 2018 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.